Welcome to the Paul Has Fun podcast, and these are weird stories.
Weird stories.
Weird story.
Weird stories.
Weird stories.
Weird stories.
Let's get weird! Let's get weird! Weird, get weird!
Welcome back to the podcast, or if this is your first time, hello. It's October when I'm recording this. It's a spooky month, and this is a new Weird Stories episode. Just wanted to break up the movie reviews, which have been so plentiful, and I'm sitting literally like on two. By the time I record, there's probably like 3 or 4 of them, so I just don't want this to become the movie review podcast. Let's go ahead and get into some new and weird stories. I wouldn't say with this month being October, these are spooky stories, but nonetheless weird and just tasty. First one is from MSN.com. This is from about 2 months ago, July, August, and the headline being,
"A rarely seen Amazon tribe emerges from rainforest as loggers move in."
Let's go ahead and get into this here. Striking new images show members of one of the world's most isolated indigenous tribes emerging from the rainforest in a remote part of the Peruvian Amazon, close to where several logging companies have been granted concessions. The Mashco Piro tribe is believed to be one of the world's largest indigenous communities, living without outside contact. But in recent weeks, the tribe has been spotted on the banks of the Las Piedras River, just miles from the logging activity. More than 50 Mashco Piro members appeared at the remote jungle village of Monte Salvado in southeastern Peru, and 17 showed up near the neighboring village of Puerto Nuevo, according to indigenous rights advocacy group Survival International, which released the images. This is a quote from one of the people in this organization. "This is irrefutable evidence that many Mashco Piro live in this area, which the government has not only failed to protect, but actually sold off to logging companies." Alfredo Vargas Pio, president of the local indigenous organization FENAMAD, said in a news release. He expressed concern that the logging workers could bring new diseases into the area, devastating the Mashco Piro, but that violent clashes could break out between loggers and the indigenous community. This group, FENAMAD, told Reuters that in recent weeks the tribe has been seen emerging more frequently in search of food, apparently moving away from the loggers.
Remarkable new footage shows members of one of the world's most secluded tribes emerging from the Peruvian Amazon near controversial logging sites. The tribe emerged in search of food near the remote villages of Monte Salvado and Puerto Nuevo in recent weeks. The Mashco Piro tribe was spotted near the Las Piedras River, just kilometers from tree-cutting projects, raising fears of conflict with loggers.
As always with these weird stories, I always leave links to where you can see these articles for yourself. And there are pictures, and there's even a video of this tribe coming out of the forest, which is fascinating. I'm going to scroll down to the final few paragraphs here. The government has declined to intervene, and in December, Peru's conservative-led Congress allowed the legalization of land that was deforested without permits, including on territory used by indigenous people. The government did not respond to a request for comment. As many as 20 tribes are living in voluntary isolation in Peru, and even more such tribes live in Brazil, where their right to isolation has long been enshrined in the Constitution, although they have been beset in recent years by illegal mining, land grabs, and deforestation. The Peruvian government has previously estimated the number of Mashco Piro to be about 750, spread across the central Peruvian Amazon and into Brazil. This is another quote here. "These incredible images show that very large numbers of uncontacted Mashco Piro people are living just a few miles from where loggers are," Survival International Director Caroline Pierce said. "This is a humanitarian disaster in the making." You hear in passing that there are still people like living in tribes around this planet. As I've said many times before in these Weird Stories episodes, there are still things on this planet that we have not discovered yet. I'm a firm believer of that, whether it be deep in the ocean, deep in the forest. This has been obviously discovered because they know these people exist in this forest, but I still believe that there are even other secrets and things deep within this earth, other people potentially living in this earth that we don't know about. But that's just my little conspiracy 2 cents there. Let's go ahead and move on to the next story here. This next article is on phys.org. Once again, these stories are more so from July. I just kind of been holding on to them and gonna go ahead and get into them now. The headline for this one particular article is
Snakes on a plate. Pythons touted as protein alternative.
Getting into the article here. In a warehouse in the lush, humid farmlands of central Thailand, thousands of pythons are coiled in containers, rearing and striking at the glass as people pass by. They are being raised for the robust diamond-patterned skins, which are sold to high-end European fashion houses for belts, bags, and handbags. But some scientists and industry insiders believe the snake's true value could lie in their meat. Demand for the meat is growing globally, despite the carbon footprint associated with traditional livestock. And while a plant-based diet is often touted as the best alternative, some feel reptiles have been overlooked as an option. Snakes can tolerate high temperatures and drought, reproduce quickly, and grow far faster than traditional sources of animal protein, while consuming a lot less. Researchers estimate that China and Vietnam alone have at least 4,000 python farms, producing several million snakes, mostly for the fashion industry. In a journal called Nature, there's a quote here that says, "Python farming may offer a flexible and efficient response to global food insecurity."
Now, you've always thought that Thailand was exotic, and in order to prove how exotic Thailand is, in Uttaradit, Thailand, thousands of pythons are raised for their skins, but some scientists believe that their meat could be an efficient alternative protein source. Pythons, which consume less food and reproduce quickly, offer a better feed-to-meat ratio than traditional livestock.
The researchers spent a year studying nearly 5,000 reticulated and Burmese pythons at 2 commercial farms in Vietnam and Thailand. And I guess it's researchers from this journal, once again called Nature. Another quote from them saying, they can't survive for months on end with no food at all and no water, and literally they won't lose condition at all. That sounds weird. They won't lose condition at all, said Patrick Aust, director of the African Institute of Applied Herpetology and one of the scientists involved in the study. Herpetology. Sounds like herpes. I know about herpes. The pythons were fed waste chicken and wild-caught rodents and offered a more efficient feed-to-meat ratio than poultry, beef, and even crickets. They also reproduce rapidly, Aust said, with female pythons laying between 50 to 100 eggs annually. That is music to the ears of Emilio Malucci, whose farm in central Thailand's Uttrat houses around 9,000 pythons. Malucci, who moved to Thailand from Italy with his family more than 4 decades ago, has had little success convincing people to take up snake meat, and most of what he produces is either discarded or goes to fish farms. It's a complete waste, he told AFP. I eat my snakes because I know what they eat and how I raise them, he said. Wild python has long been eaten throughout Southeast Asia, but the meat has yet to attract widespread international interest, despite offering a chicken-like texture, low in saturated fats. That sounds interesting, actually. The problem is that there is no market for python flesh. We need to educate people about its possibilities, said Malucci. The climate impact of meat has been extensively documented, with the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change noting that the meat from grazing animals, mainly beef, has been consistently identified as the single food with the greatest impact on the environment. I am a vegan for the most part, and it's not for ethical reasons in the sense of like for animals and stuff. It's more so for health. I have a thyroid issue and my cholesterol is always just elevated, so I don't want to die of a heart attack or a stroke, similar to what happened to my dad. So it's the main reason why I follow a vegan diet, and I watch and consume a lot of vegan content, like Mike the Vegan or Plant Chompers. These are 2 YouTubers. whose content I watch often, or like a few podcasts from Rip Esselstyn. I'm forgetting the other one that I really enjoy with Chuck Carroll. That one's good too. But especially Mike the Vegan's videos, he definitely talks about the impact of basically, using beef and cattle and chicken on the environment, and how much water and energy that uses compared to plant products or plant proteins and things of that nature. And this is very interesting, this article, where it basically is saying an alternative even to that. And I find that fascinating in terms of using snakes instead. And I've heard all these, like from movies and TV shows, how a lot of this animal meat from different animals, it always tastes like chicken, right? It always has the texture like chicken. But this could be very good news if it can help feed people, and it being a much lower cost, energy-wise, money-wise, than beef or cattle or chickens and things of that nature, pork. But continuing with the article here, I'm going to go down to the final few paragraphs. The paradox has spurred a push to explore meat alternatives, from edible insects to lab-grown meats. But uptake of these alternatives has not yet been significant. The commercial python farmers face strict processing standards that the industry complains are outdated. Despite these challenges, Ost believes python farming has huge potential and is enthusiastic about its merits. You can barbecue it or eat it in curries and stews. I like to try it in garlic butter until it's nice and crispy, he said. It's a very versatile meat. Animal welfare organizations are less impressed. Earlier this year, animal rights group PETA accused Malucci's farm of cruelty after secretly documenting his pythons being killed with hammers before being skinned. Malucci has placed large posters on his walls on how to kill pythons humanely, and said his industry is no different from other types of livestock farming. Farm animals are slaughtered all over the world, he said. Pythons are no different. Very interesting. I'm not grossed out by that. If there's other ways to feed people, I think that's great.
Taking a quick pause for the cause, and just wanted to ask for your support. If you're enjoying this podcast or have enjoyed any of the content that I put out, please support this podcast by doing any or all of your Amazon shopping by clicking the link in the magical unicorn-like show notes. And also, you can donate as well. I leave a link where you can donate through the Cash App, PayPal, or through Zelle. This podcast is not free to do. I love doing it, and I love bringing it to you. But some notes of appreciation, i.e. dollars, would be greatly, greatly desired and appreciated on my end. So let's go ahead and get back into the episode. Once again, I leave all those links in the fantastical, once-in-a-lifetime, absolutely stupendous show notes. And you can find those on whatever media player that you're listening on. Let's do this. Let's go back into it.
Getting into the third story here. This is on the NewYorkPost.com, and once again, a story from July. The headline being,
Meteor soars over Statue of Liberty at 34,000 miles per hour, burns up above Manhattan as New Yorkers report shaking, says NASA.
a meteor soared over the Statue of Liberty before disintegrating about 30 miles above Midtown Manhattan on Tuesday morning. Once again, this is in July, according to NASA. The space rock passed through the atmosphere over the Big Apple around 11:15 a.m., the same time New Yorkers reported seeing a flash of fire streak across the sky and the ground lightly shaking beneath their feet. This is crazy. So in the Northeast, we've had like an eclipse, I think, this year. We've had this meteor situation, and also we had an earthquake. I remember feeling it here in my apartment, in my little studio apartment here in Union City, New Jersey, where it felt like a truck was passing by and the pipes were rumbling, you know? And now we find out about this meteor business.
A sight to behold Tuesday above New York City if you were lucky. Several people said they saw a meteor streak across the sky in New York City, along with a loud boom and shaking buildings. According to NASA, initial reports suggest the daylight fireball passed over the Statue of Liberty before moving west into New Jersey at 38,000 miles an hour. However, NASA officials do say this trajectory is very crude and uncertain, adding that the estimations are based on a few eyewitness accounts and there's no camera or satellite data currently available to refine the solution.
20 people across New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut reported seeing the fireball stretch across the sky, with one person saying the shooting star looked green, yellow, and white. The speeding spectacle lasted about 30 seconds before fragmenting into 3 pieces, the eyewitness wrote to the American Meteor Society. NASA's Meteor, which estimates that the daylight fireball was spotted about 40 miles above New York Harbor's Upper Bay, where Lady Liberty stands. Scrolling down to the bottom of this particular article, the U.S. Geological Survey National Earthquake Information Center, that's a mouthful, confirmed that it received reports of shaking in the northeast New Jersey and Staten Island area, but eliminated the possibility that an earthquake struck. Oh, I was talking about the earthquake? An examination of the seismic data in the area showed no evidence of an earthquake, the agency said in a statement. The USGS has no direct evidence of the source of shaking. Past reports of shaking with no associated seismic signal have had atmospheric origins such as sonic booms or weather-related phenomena. NASA suspects the shaking was tied to reports of military activity in the area. The shooting star sighting comes as the Big Apple withstood scorching temperatures Tuesday. The mercury reached 100 degrees, but it felt more like 110. So that's another thing. Crazy heat this past July. But July is normally the hottest month of the year, so it doesn't surprise too much. But a lot happening in the Northeast of things that we normally don't get, you know. There's always talk of an earthquake that's big enough to pretty much destroy the world again, and that we basically have no kind of defense of that happening. You find that like kind of on social media, you know, just scrolling up or down. But it's interesting stuff. Let's get to the fourth and final story here. This is once again on MSN.com. Once again, I will leave links to all these stories so you can check it out for yourselves. In terms of pictures, some of them have videos. And let's go ahead and get into this final story. MSN.com. This is once again from July.
First suicide pod use soon in Switzerland.
Suicide pod. What is this? Getting into the article. An assisted dying group expects a portable suicide pod to be used for the first time in Switzerland, potentially within months, providing death without medical supervision, it said Wednesday. The space-age looking Sacro capsule, first unveiled in 2019, replaces the oxygen inside it with nitrogen, causing death by hypoxia. It would cost $20 to use. That's dirt cheap. A lot of people would sign up for that if this thing became available over here in the U.S. The Last Resort organization said it saw no legal obstacle to its use in Switzerland, where the law generally allows assisted suicide if the person commits the lethal act themselves.
A criminal investigation is underway tonight after the first known death of an American woman in a so-called suicide pod in Switzerland. The woman is described as a 64-year-old from the Midwest who had an autoimmune condition. Police say she died in a forest near the German border, where the capsule called the sarcopod was placed. It's the first time it's ever been used, and it allows a person to release nitrogen gas into the chamber at the touch of a button. That removes all the oxygen, and it causes the person to fall asleep and then suffocate. Assisted dying is legal in Switzerland, but only without external assistance. Multiple arrests have been made in this case for incitement and the aiding and abetting of suicide.
This quote is from Florian Willett. He is the Chief Executive Officer of the Last Resort, this particular company. Since we have people indeed queuing up, asking to use the Sacro, it's very likely that it will take place pretty soon. Wow. That's the whole article right there, actually. And there is a suicide pod for it. I'm going to try to find accompanying video reports of a lot of these stories so you can kind of get a little bit of an extra context and a little bit of added production to this podcast. And of course, I will give credit to all of those videos or quotes and audio from those videos in the show notes for this episode. But those are the 4 weird stories for this episode for this month of October. Please let me know what you think. You could do so on the blog at paulhasfun.com, or wherever you might be listening to this or watching this that has a place for you to comment. You can do so there as well. My name is Paul. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. If you're seeing the audio version of this on YouTube, peace.